John here from Great Lakes Country. Now, I've done a fair amount of barbecue videos on this channel, and recently a company called Z Grills reached out to me. If you've been much into smoking meats in the last couple years, you may have very well already heard of Z Grills. They're a manufacturer of smokers, and more specifically, they specialize in pellet grills. A somewhat young company, but in the last couple years, they have been going pretty hard in marketing their pellet smokers. They want to expand their share of the consumer barbecue market, and they are not being subtle about it. Anyway, a rep from the company asked if they could send me a free smoker from their flagship product line. I said, sure, but why? Well, apparently sending people free or nearly free smokers is like a big part of their whole business plan. Okay, well, let me clarify what I just said. They sent me a free smoker because I'm a YouTuber who makes barbecue videos, and they'd love for me to make a video that shows this thing in action. That's a thing some companies do with people who have YouTube channels, and yes, it's pretty awesome. That being said, I told them the same thing I tell every company who contacts me. I will make a video and review your product, but it will be an honest, 100% legitimate review. Sure, I'll mention the product's key selling points, and sometimes I'll let the company post my video to their own socials and whatnot, but everything I say in this video is 100% real and true and reflects my experience with this product and this company. This isn't a sponsorship, and I'm not being paid to sell it. And I will talk about everything I do and don't like about it. So that's why they sent me a free smoker. But for regular customers, and here's where it gets a little weird, they'll send you 10 free smokers. I'm gonna talk about this in greater detail a little bit later and tell you how and why they're giving away so many smokers. In the meantime, I do want to actually show this smoker. I want to talk about the assembly and setup and do some smoking and then talk about my impressions of, well, everything. This video may end up being kind of long, so feel free to jump around the different chapters to see the parts that interest you. Anyway, let's get into this Z Grills pellet smoker. My Z Grills smoker arrived in 2 separate boxes, and it required a pretty substantial amount of assembly. I'm not going to talk in depth about the assembly in this video, but I actually published another video at the exact same time as this one, in which I go through every single step of the assembly and setup of this smoker. So check that out to see the step-by-step assembly and startup process. And I will mention that my smoker came with a defective controller panel, and I had to contact the company to send me a replacement. I was not thrilled by having to do a bunch of extra work to take this hopper unit all apart, to get to the electronics, to replace the controller, but the surgery was successful and my smoker began working as it's supposed to. Again, check out that other video to see a much more detailed walkthrough of all of that. But for now, let's get right into doing a couple cooks on this smoker, because there's no better way to figure out how it works and what I like or don't like about it. I thought I'd dive in head first and try what is generally considered the hardest thing to make on a smoker. That's right, brisket. Though it can be hard to find a good brisket way up here in the north, and the only one I could even find was this sad, small, thin, weird-shaped brisket at a grocery store. It seems that stores and meat markets around these parts sometimes get in shipments of decent briskets, but other times throughout the year, it will be impossible to even find one at all. Anyway, I'll do my best to get this thing trimmed, despite its shape and size being a bit wonky in basically every way. Then it's time to season it up. I like a classic salt, pepper, garlic on brisket, and my ratio is 1 part kosher salt, 1 part coarse black pepper, and 1/2 part granulated garlic. And of course, I'll do a nice heavy coating all over all sides and surfaces. Then I'm firing up the pellet grill. By the way, there is an initial startup procedure that you have to do when you first set up your new Z grill, and I also covered that in that assembly video I made. And before I forget, I'll make sure the hopper is good and full with pellets. I'll mention that Z Grills sent me a couple bags of these nice cherry wood pellets, but if I'm trying to do Texas brisket, I gotta go with my oak pellets. Anyhow, I'll get my smoker going and set it to 225 degrees, and then in goes the brisket. These smokers do come with some temperature probes that plug into the control panel, but I'll mention that I prefer to use my ThermoPro because it has this handy wireless monitor that I can keep with me inside the house. Other Z Grills models do have all manner of Wi-Fi capabilities, which let you do, among other things, monitor the temperature remotely, but this particular grill did not come with that. Now I'm just letting this brisket cook away for the next many hours. I'll mostly leave it alone and just check on it every couple hours or so. I really do enjoy the absolute convenience of the pellet smoker because I don't have to babysit it at all. Just let it do its thing. Okay, while that brisket's cooking away, let's get into this whole 10 free smokers thing. Like I said earlier, Z Grills is going hard with their marketing and growth. So they've come up with this program that they call their reward crowdfunding. How it works is like this. You buy one of their 700 series or 1000 series grills for $777. You get the grill within 3 to 7 days and you use it. Then in 5 years, they'll send you another one for free. Then in another 5 years, they'll send you another one for free. Every 5 years for the next 50 years, they'll send you another one. It's a ridiculously bold and slightly perplexing business plan. Now, a couple caveats and observations to what I just explained. One, the brand new smoker they'll send you every 5 years is technically free, but the company does state that you will have to pay $100 for shipping for each of those subsequent free grills. So not exactly free, but pretty cheap. And this grill they sent me is pretty big and super heavy, so $100 for shipping isn't completely outrageous. 2, I remain kind of confused about why they named this whole product promotion reward crowdfunding. I asked my contact at Z Grills about it, and I mostly got the same talking points that I read on their website. The best I can figure is that a big marketing strategy needs a big, buzzy name, and reward crowdfunding capitalizes on buzzy internet words that are all the rage these days. 3, free grills for the next 50 years sounds insane, but it's 100% what Z Grills is doing. Now, as a sentient person who exists on this plane of reality, I can't help but think, okay, but that means they need to be around as a company in 50 years, and there's no guarantee of that. In my opinion, that's a valid thought to have. The longevity of a corporation is never guaranteed. So I guess in that sense, you will have to have faith that the company will still be here in 2075 when you're due your 10th free grill. That being said, Weber has been in business since 1893. Charbroil was founded in 1948. Heck, Traeger was founded 40 years ago, and I'd never even heard of them until about a decade ago. Anyway, the point is, the popularity of barbecue and the demand for cookers has increased like crazy over the years, and it seems perfectly likely that Z Grills will still be cranking away 50 years from now. Anyway, that's the gist of the whole promotion. For $777, you can choose one of their 6 models that are part of this reward crowdfunding program. And every 5 years, you can have them send you a brand new one for $100 for the next 5 decades. Check out the promotional link in the video description below if you want to check out this program and the smokers you can choose from. And here's how we're looking after about 2 hours. Starting to darken up a little, and the early stages of bark are starting to form. Jumping ahead to 6.5 hours in, we've reached an internal temp of 165. So I'm going to pull the brisket out and wrap it up. Or more specifically, I'll give it the old aluminum foil half wrap, which is my preferred method of wrapping because it allows the bark to continue forming on top. Then I'm just popping the brisket back in there for another few hours. And at about the 11-hour mark, I decided to pull the brisket. The internal temp is at 208, which is a lot higher than I'd normally go, but this weird brisket simply isn't cooking in a very predictable way. It's probing mostly tender, though there are a couple spots that still seem a little tight. In any case, the fat cap is rendered perfectly, so I'm wrapping it completely in some more foil, along with all the fat and juices that have collected in the half wrap. I'll swaddle the whole thing in a thick towel and let it rest for a few hours. Now it's finally time to unwrap this brisket and see how we did. From the outside, it looks great and smells great. The fat cap has a good jiggle, and the whole thing is somewhat floppy, though as soon as I start slicing, I can tell that the inside is not as tender as it should be. I've basically concluded that this was just not a very good brisket, and was extremely lacking in intramuscular fat. But let's examine it from the point of view of a smoker review. The bark came out great, not quite black, but a very, very dark red. The fat cap is rendered very nicely, and take a look at that smoke ring. I'm actually rather impressed that this smoke ring came from a pellet grill. The smell and taste are obviously not quite as smoky as what you'd get from a wood-burning offset, but there is definitely still a decent smokiness to it. Unfortunately, this brisket did not come out very amazing, though that's not really at all the fault of the smoker, but rather what seems to be a bottom-of-the-barrel brisket that found its way to my very northern grocery store. Oh well, the concept was proven, and I'll be turning most of this into chopped brisket with which to make some delicious sandwiches. But let's move on to something that's a little more foolproof. Now it's the next day, and I'm doing a slab of St. Louis style ribs. These St. Louis ribs don't need much prepping or trim work. I'll peel off that back membrane, trim off a couple little dangly bits, and maybe this really narrow end of the rack. And now for the seasoning. I'll go on nice and heavy with my favorite pork rub. Of course, I'll make sure to get all sides and surfaces so we've got some good even coverage. And once again, I'm firing up the smoker and setting it to 225. Then in go the ribs, and I'm going to basically leave them alone for the next 4 to 5 hours until the internal temp is 195. Though about halfway through, I will rotate the rack of ribs 180 degrees, just in case there are any hot spots or uneven temps inside the chamber here. Then out come the ribs, and I'm going to wrap them in foil. But first, I'll brush with a nice coating of some good barbecue sauce. Then wrap them up tight and back into the smoker they go for about another 30 minutes or so. Obviously, if you don't want any sauce cooked onto your ribs, just skip that step. Assuming your ribs are tender and pass the bend test, you can just jump ahead to the resting phase. After a little more than half an hour, I'm pulling the ribs out once again, and now it's time to rest. And at long last, it's time to dig in. I'm looking for tenderness, a clean pull away from the bone, and of course, some great smoky taste. And that is a very tasty rib. Incredibly tender, but not completely falling away from the bone. Just a good, clean bite of rib meat. The taste is great, though the smoke flavor is very faint. It's there, but it's incredibly mild, even having used those same oak pellets that I used for that brisket earlier. In any case, the Z-Grill smoker did produce a perfectly delicious and properly cooked rack of ribs. Okay, now that I've done a couple long cooks on this thing, I've had plenty of time to observe the things I like about this Z-Grill smoker and the things I don't especially like. Let's start with the likes. Well, this is the obvious one. It's really convenient. As would be the case with any pellet smoker, it does not get any easier than this. I learned barbecue on an offset, and it's really quite marvelous how much work does not go into doing a long cook on this pellet grill. It's practically no more complicated than throwing a piece of food into the oven and ignoring it for hours and hours. Number 2, the controls are pretty easy to use. You got a power button, and you got a temperature dial, though you definitely should read the manual or watch my other video to fully understand the startup procedure and particularly your very first burn. 3, the smoker looks pretty nice. There are a lot of ugly grills out there, but this one looks pretty sleek. None of that really matters in how good it works to cook food, but it definitely doesn't hurt when your gear looks good. 4, it does a perfectly good job of slow cooking meat over the course of many hours. But let's not forget the importance of starting with a quality piece of meat in the first place, unlike some briskets I know who shall remain nameless. And 5, it's very efficient. After that long rib cook and that super long brisket cook, the pellet hopper is not even close to being empty, and I didn't even fill it up all the way to the brim in the first place. So one bag of pellets ought to get you a whole lot of cook time. Compare that to how much wood I go through during a 12-hour cook, even on my very small offset, and there's no question about which is more efficient to run. 6, my particular model features this base cabinet with doors, which is very handy to store some things, such as extra bags of pellets. Now for the things I did not especially like about this Z-Grill's model. Obviously, my number one gripe is that my specific grill arrived with a defective controller unit, which resulted in me having to wait a week for a replacement part and then do a bunch of annoying work to actually replace that part. I have no idea if this is a common occurrence with Z-Grills, but it certainly is an unfortunate coincidence that it happened with a grill they sent to a YouTube guy to review. But oh well, I got it handled and the smoker is working just fine now. 2. As far as the specific design and features of the grill, I really only have one complaint, and that's this angled drip pan that sits beneath the grill grates. I understand why they slanted it like this, so drippings and grease run down it and drain into the grease bucket, but the existence of this super slanted slab of metal means that I cannot put a water pan under the grates. I can put a tray under there, like I did here to catch drips and minimize the mess, but I cannot reasonably put a pan with some water in it down there. That is a pretty common practice in backyard barbecue, and it's a bummer that this design makes doing so absolutely impossible. 3. I didn't love the assembly process. It wasn't hard, but it was pretty time consuming. But this is not a thing that's unique to Z Grills. Basically, any consumer grade smoker or grill you buy is going to require assembly, unless you buy it from a local store that offers an assembly service. Anyway, this is just a general complaint about how it seems I'm spending my entire life assembling stuff these days, and not really a complaint about Z Grills in particular. 4. This also isn't really a complaint specifically about Z Grills, but rather pellet smokers altogether. I don't especially love the smell of burning wood pellets. Yes, they're made out of wood and they smell sorta like burning wood, but they've just got a weird scent to them that just isn't the same as burning actual wood splits. And it doesn't even seem to really matter what variety of wood pellets I use. I've burned cherry pellets, apple, oak. They each have their own smell, of course, but they all also have this other sort of prevailing funk to them. It just smells like pellet. That being said, the taste doesn't really reflect that. The smoky taste in the food is very light compared to a stick-burning smoker, but there is no weirdness or funk about it. And on that topic, let's talk a little more about the smoke level. I noticed that my Z Grill smoker did in fact get very smoky, but only sometimes. Most of the time, the amount of smoke coming from the smokestack was almost imperceptible. But every once in a while, this thing would start billowing tons of smoke from the stack and the chamber. I assume that this occurs each time the smoker senses that it needs more heat and dumps some pellets into the fire pot, but just about as quickly as those billows of smoke began, they subside. I'd say that for about every 10 to 15 minutes of running, there might be about 45 seconds of heavy-ish smoke, and I'm sure that all depends on how high the heat is set. So after having put this Z Grills through its paces, I believe I could summarize my thoughts as follows. I will absolutely use this pellet smoker when time and convenience are a factor and I'm looking for an easy cook. And make no mistake, doing a very long cook on this pellet grill is way easier. It is mostly hands-off, and I could even smoke all night long while I'm in bed sleeping if I want to. But if I've got all the time in the world to spend on a cook, or I need to produce what I believe is my absolute best barbecue, I'm going to use the trusty offset. As with anything, it's all about balance and priority. If simple is the thing you need the most, then it's a no-brainer. Buy this smoker. But if winning a barbecue competition is the thing you dream of, a pellet grill isn't what you seek. So there you have it. And again, if you want to check out this exact smoker, or one of the other models that are part of the Z Grills reward crowdfunding program, I'll put a promotional link in the video description below. And if you've already bought a Z Grill smoker, please let me know in the comments how you like it and what you've been cooking with it. And as always, be sure to like and subscribe and stay up to date with all our latest stuff, including future smoking and grilling videos. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'm John, and this is Great Lakes Country.